I'm Katie Cianci. I am the host of Courage to Rise Show. Welcome. We're so honored to have Cory Martin with us, who is a best-selling author, yoga instructor, and she has a lot to offer, a lot of knowledge and experience, her own experience of adversity and challenge, and she's been able to overcome and create an opportunity, which is really why I created this show, because I'm so excited to have Cory here because there's also a lot of connection too that we have in the sense of, just a love of yoga and a love of health and wellness, and how a mind-body-spirit connection and mind-body-spirit health can really help us get through these challenges of life. And so I'm just honored and grateful to have you here. You have several books. You have Yoga, Chronic Illness, a feel-good guide. That's coming up, or that's already?
That's coming up.
That's coming up. Okay, because we talked about that. So excited. And then you also have the Love Sick, which is actually what got me really interested in talking to you. So you have Love Sick, and then a best-selling yoga for beginners.
Correct.
So welcome.
Thank you.
And so I'd like to start out with just kind of sharing, the topic of this interview is life is a practice. So I'd love to talk about how life is a practice and how yoga is a part of that, a part of life, and how it can be incorporated in life. Because some people think yoga is just movement. Well, it is. There's so much more to yoga.
Sure.
And would you like to share a little bit about how you started on this journey? Because it's a really powerful story. And I think it'd be very inspiring to people who are watching.
Yeah, so I started yoga when I was, in my mid-20s. And back then it was like Madonna's arms were ripped and everyone, was doing this like workout fad and they looked amazing. And I was like, okay, I'd just come out of a bad relationship. I was 20 pounds overweight. I was like, I'll try it. Yeah. I'm sure it's nothing. Like, I'd been an athlete my entire life, like played soccer, swam, like ran, did triathlons, all these things. And I was like, yoga will be nothing. Like, it'll just put me to sleep. The first class, I was like shaking. And I was like, what did I get into? This is terrible. This was the worst idea I've ever had, except at the very end, I laid in Shavasana. And for 5 minutes, I had my eyes closed and my whole body was just like, oh, this is amazing. And so I kept going back and I got better and better. And, for me at first, because it was just about the physical practice, that's all I took away from it. But over the years, and now it's been, over 15 years of practicing, it turned from this totally physical thing that changed my body physically to this entire practice that changed my mental outlook on life. And so like 2 years after I started practicing, when I had started to kind of understand the philosophies and understand that yoga was more than just the poses, that like I was more relaxed at work. I was more relaxed when, as a writer, I was getting rejected all the time. There were all these things happening and it was easier to deal with life because of what I had learned on the mat. And during that time, about 2 years later, I was diagnosed with MS, or was told I had MS. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I was 28 years old. I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. All my friends were getting married. Their careers were taking off. And I was just like, my life is over. And, I was depressed and I was alone and I lived alone. And so I would sit on my couch and I'd Google all the symptoms. And I thought, like, this is the worst thing that could happen to me. But the one thing I did during that whole time, even if I slept the entire day because I was depressed or like fatigued or just not feeling well, I would still go to yoga. And that was like the one thing that saved me. And so it's been this process. I think it was like 4 or 5 years later, I eventually became certified and started teaching, and I learned even more about the philosophy, and that became more part of my life. And so I realized, especially dealing with illness, that, life is a practice. You go through these ups and downs and nothing's ever perfect and nothing's ever like, you don't achieve something and then be like, okay, I'm done. Like, you achieve it and then you go, what's next? Or that wasn't what I thought. What else can I do? Like, there is no perfect. And that's how yoga is, right? Like, every pose I do, on the mat is never perfect. It's always going to change day to day. And that's life. Like, that's my health. One day I'm like feeling great. The next day I'm stuck in bed. Like, you just don't know. And so to me, like, combining those two and understanding that really helped me get through all my illnesses too.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know what's interesting is, like, I talked to, like, some of you may know that I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so I'm a therapist, and I work with a lot of people with addiction and trauma. And that's some of the things that I teach, as far as like meditation and mindfulness and some practices of yoga. And I just, teach them about it, and I encourage them to go to yoga. I said, take a yoga class. And the response I get, and I'm sure some people that are listening is like, oh, I can't do yoga. You mean you like that thing where you put your leg behind your neck, or, you do all these kind of crazy poses. And it's not that. Like, you don't have to be super flexible or do everything perfect. And that's a reflection of life. Exactly. That's what you're sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
So, how is it that, so for you having, so you were diagnosed with MS, do you still have the symptoms, or how has yoga helped you manage the MS symptoms?
Here's the lovely part about life, because it's never perfect, right?
Yes.
So for 10 years, I was like doing really good. And then in my late 30s, 2 years ago, I started having all these really bad symptoms. Like the idea of chewing food was too much. I couldn't walk upstairs without being completely out of breath. And so I told my MS doctor, and she's like, I don't think it's MS this time. Like, I think it's something else. So I went through all these tests. Turns out it was lupus. So now I have lupus. And MS is like still on the back burner, but if it's MS, or if that's what's in the background, then that's like barely affecting me. I have lesions on my brain, but they're not active. And so in terms of MS neurological symptoms, I'm doing really good. Lupus really threw me for a loop. So sorry, I forgot what you just asked.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, no, I mean, it's related, right? Because it's like, okay, so it helped your MS symptoms to not get worse, really. I mean, is what you're saying. And then you found out that you also have lupus, which can happen. You can have a co-occurring symptoms, especially with autoimmune disorder. I mean, autoimmune disorder, and then with MS is common, actually. It's it's common.
Really common, which is like, I did all this research. I thought I understood everything. And that was the one thing I'd never heard. I can't believe it. But I was like, oh, you get one disease? Like, no way you're going to get another crappy one. Like, why would the universe do that to me? Like, it's like getting struck by lightning twice, but it's actually very common. And so like during that time when I couldn't physically practice yoga, that's when I really had to turn on to the philosophies. There's this philosophy like Sacha, which is truth. And to me, that meant like not just saying I'm fine, because I had been so strong for so long. Like when I really needed help, it was being able to say I need help. Or, my fiance was like, we had just moved, and he was like, do you want dinner? I was like, no, I'm fine. Like I was just, moving is stressful enough as it is. And I was just like, I can't deal. And he was like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm going to shower. And when I came back out, I was like, did you order your dinner? And he's like, no. I'm like, why not? He's like, I was waiting for you. And I was like, but I told you I don't want to eat. And what I really meant was like the actual thought of having to chew my food and digest it and sit at a table, all of that was way too much for my body to handle. It wasn't just like, oh, I just don't want to eat. It was like, it was actual physical symptoms. And so I realized that like, just saying I'm fine or saying I'm tired isn't enough for other people. Like you have to be really truthful with yourself, but also with others in order to get the help you need.
Yeah, that's so true, because so many people, I think, I mean, there's some people that, just kind of go through life and they are in a space of, they feel comfortable with, being in a place of asking for help or not being strong. Like it's just kind of a pattern they've had. And then there's people like yourself who are always like the strong one, the one that never complains, the one that never, asks for help. Is just like, even if you're like struggling so much, you're just like, I'm going to just show that I'm okay. But the thing is like, then your body your body just says, okay, enough. Like, this is time for you. Like, you just get to a point where you finally surrender and you
Yeah.
ask for help. And what a breakthrough that is, to
Yeah.
have that moment, and then he supports you.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, that's all I had to do.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's so much easier than trying to be strong and fighting. Like, just to say, like, this is what's happening. Can you help me? And, if you're in a good relationship or friends, family, whatever it is, they will help you. Like, they're
Yeah.
not going to say, no, sorry,
Yeah. Well, there's a fear sometimes for people, if in the past they've asked for help and they didn't get it, like, there's to be able to say, oh, you can help me.
Yeah,
That's so powerful.
it really is.
Yeah. And how does it feel to ask for help? And I mean, you said it feels good. It's easier, right, to live life when you have someone supporting you. And then
Mhm.
how does it help the symptoms of lupus to not have to pretend that everything's okay all the time?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot better. Like, at least it felt like, okay, I could deal with this because it wasn't just on me. I wasn't alone.
Mhm.
Um, Somebody else could take on part of this burden with me.
Mhm.
And even though, like, I would be in immense pain, like, at least he was like, try this, try that. Like, I researched this, like, it wasn't all falling on me to do everything, which I think is really helpful. Because that mental stress does not help your body at all. So if you can relieve some of that, like, you'll feel a lot better, even if your symptoms are still there.
Can you help people understand how that is, like, stress? So the mental stress, because I think sometimes people still think that it's separate from the body, like the mind is separate from the body. And do you mind sharing how that is?
Yes, I had a good example of this before. Of
Mhm.
course, my brain is affected, so sometimes I forget
That's
things.
okay. I love that you're so, like, open with it. Like, hey, I just might, yeah.
It's like, can I look through my notes? No,
Yeah.
like there's always this sort of woo-woo concept of, like, the mind and body are connected and, like,
Yeah.
they work together. But I mean, if you just think about, like, the realistic things that happen and not disease, not anything else, just like, okay, if I'm anxious, if I'm worried about something, like, you feel that in your stomach, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's like this. Or what about butterflies, right? That's even, like, sometimes a good thing, but you feel that, and that's connected to your brain. So it's just learning to listen to the bigger things too. You can look at those small things, like babies, they cry when they want to eat, when they, like, they're very instinctual and they're, like, connected, but we're not. Like, we are told to ignore that, stay strong, no pain, no gain, just keep going, and it's like, okay, but, like, what if you actually listen? Like, your body sends signals. Like, if you're hungry, your stomach growls. Like, there's all these things that I think we've ignored. And if you can just slowly start to listen, and it sounds so, like, woo woo and weird, but it's just like, okay, just how about, next time you feel butterflies, maybe take a moment and realize, what are you thinking, or what's about to happen in your life that's giving you those butterflies, and what is your mind taking in, and then why do you have those butterflies? And then you'll see there's a connection, and you'll start to, like, translate it to more subtle things. That's how I always looked at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And stress, like, having that stress and not listening to your body creates also, like, inflammation in our
Yeah.
body. And a lot of times we don't know that, like, that it can create that. And you're right. Like, we just don't think about what's happening. We just say, okay, I got to just keep going. I got to keep going. And if there's pain, that's a good thing. And it's like, no, like, I mean, to some extent, there's going to be discomfort, but when there's, in your stomach, that's where a lot comes from, is actually in our
Mhm.
stomach,
For sure.
in our stomach. So when you came up with, like, the book, like the title Lovesick, do you
Mhm.
mind sharing, like, how you came up with that title and what it meant?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, so I'll tell you a little bit about the book, so then it probably makes more sense. Lovesick is my memoir, and I was in my late 20s, and everyone was getting married around me, and I found out I had MS, and so I was like, devastated. And the one thing that came to my mind, and I don't know why, because I was very focused on my career and didn't care about men at the time, like I wasn't looking for a relationship, but all I could think was, who's going to want to marry me now? Like no one's going to want to love me.
Yeah.
I was so like shocked first that that was a thought. And then as I dated, I actually realized that a lot of people do believe that. Like there were some really great men I met along the way. And then there were some who were like, I cannot be with you if you're going to be sick in 10 years and in a wheelchair and all of that. I don't want to deal with that. And that's fine. I mean, that's to each their own. But I realized I was onto something, like the fear I had, other people had. And so I was like, okay, well, I just wanted like a play on words. Like I was looking for love. I was clearly sick. And I was like, so also throwing myself in relationships because I just wanted somebody to love me, even though I had amazing friends and my family's amazing, you know, like my parents and my sister. I still wanted that outside validation. And so that's where that came from. Originally, the title was going to be MS to MRS because I thought I would just get married and like I would turn the MS into like an MRS degree, but that didn't work. So I was like, oh, lovesick is way better and really explains what it was. Because I was like, not only legitimately sick, but also like seriously lovesick. Like I was like, how do I find love? And I got really desperate, and like the stories are all in there. And I look at them now and I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But I had to do that in order to get to where I am today, which is engaged, happy, like life is good. It's gonna go bad at some point again, but that's okay. Like that is what it is.
Yeah, you can manage it. Wow. I mean, that reminds me of a story I'll just share if you don't mind, because it's connected to what you're saying, is that I remember in my first year of graduate school, I was under a lot of stress. And that's where sometimes MS can come up, is stressful events, like things that happen in your life. And I had my dad has MS, and he had MS at 30. And so I was in my graduate program, and my leg went numb, completely numb, and I couldn't walk. And I was like, I couldn't walk. I couldn't use it. And I went to the doctor, and I had numb in my leg and then my legs. And then it started to kind of creep up, and I thought, oh no, I have MS. And that's what the doctors were saying, although they couldn't find information about it. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? I mean, all this stuff comes up. I love to run. Like, am I going to be able to run again? Is somebody going to love me? And I was, young at the time as well. I was married at the time. But I still thought, oh, he's not going to want to be with me. He's going to leave me. I mean, all this stuff comes up, and ended up being anxiety, believe it or not, depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And, some trauma from my past that got activated. And that ended up being in the body. It manifested that way. But still, it's like, who's going to want me with depression, anxiety, and PTSD symptoms? I mean, these are things that we tell ourselves. It's not true. Like
no, it's not true.
You're lovable with everything that you come with. And your fiance is now so lucky to have you in his life, so it all turned out the right way.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for sharing that story, because I think a lot of people have those thoughts. Yeah. So with this new book that you're finding, or that you're creating, which is Yoga for Chronic Illness, you're sharing a little bit about, do you want to talk a little bit about that, and how, because that's what you're going through right now. You're using yoga to help with multiple illness.
Yeah.
More than one. You're just amazing. Thank
you.
I mean, really, that you're creating this, and you're just like, you're going, but authentically.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I've had this idea for like a year and a half of like, first it would be 2 years. Cause it was like, I'll do a yoga for MS book. And then I was like, well, I don't know. And then like lupus came around, and I was like, wait. And then I started through Instagram connecting with a lot of people that have multiple diseases and invisible and chronic illnesses. I was like, oh, there's way too much here. So for me, because, in yoga, there are 8 branches, and it's the 8 branches of Ashtanga, and it's, the poses, breath, turning inward, focus, meditation, and sort of this, they call it samadhi, which is like enlightenment. And then there's the namas and the niyamas, which are sort of, I call them like the 10 commandments. And they're these things, like I said before, like satya is truth, or ahimsa is like do no harm. And you know, some people like the strict yogis will take that as like being vegan, and I take that as like, okay, my body is going through a lot, so like I should do what I need to do to like not harm it. And so I started to look at all these concepts, and then I started to look at everything I'd been through in life with MS, lupus, and also teaching yoga. And what I found was like there's all this overlap, and how can I connect each of these sort of philosophies with something I'd been through. One of the things I realized when I was teaching is that at the beginning of class, I would ask my students, like, close your eyes, you know, let's take a few deep breaths. And a lot of them can do it. A lot of them, even if the lights were off and we're obviously in a very safe place, they cannot close their eyes. And it took me a while to realize why. And it was like, they were so concerned with what was happening around them, and not in a superficial way, but just like, if I close my eyes, I'm vulnerable and other people are going to see me. And what if they're making fun of me? Like, they're not, but you know, these are the thoughts that go through our head. And so I realized like the same thing happens with illness, right? Like we say, nobody's going to love me, who's going to want to help me, who's going to want to be around me. And it's sort of this idea of like, well, if I close my eyes, like I don't have to worry what anybody else thinks because I can't see them. Who cares, you know? And so each of the chapters basically breaks down a sort of concept like that. And it's, you know, very simple, like learn to close your eyes. And how do you do that? And how can you take philosophies from yoga? And there's always a pose at the end, but like the poses are get in a comfortable position. And for some people, that's the traditional Shavasana, laying on your back. Some people can't do that and they have to sit up, or they have to sit in a wheelchair, or they have to be on the couch, whatever it is. But it's like learning to close your eyes so that you can shut out the outside world and not care. And I realized when I was, even in the early years of practicing yoga, you know, teachers would say, don't worry what anybody else is doing on their mat. And when you first start, you're like, well, I don't look like that. How do I look like that? How can I do that? That girl's doing the splits. That guy's on his hands and, you know, like up in the air. Like, I can't do any of that. And then over time, I just stopped caring what anyone else was doing. And it was like a lot easier to just close my eyes and do my own thing. And I think those are the lessons that you can take from yoga, without having to do all the poses. Those are great. And they're a great entry into all of this. But if you're physically not able to do that, you can still learn all the philosophies. So that's what the book is about.
That is so true. When you first start yoga, I mean, I think I certainly experienced that, like, whoa, look at what they're doing. And so then you feel intimidated, and then you won't, you know, some people don't go back, you know, they just don't go back, and they're like, oh no. And so for you to have that presence and understanding, and having gone through it yourself, I imagine that you're able to support your students through that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And how nice to be in your class. We were like, okay, everyone is accepted at whatever level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
And yoga is for everyone, is what you're
saying.
It is.
Really, you know?
Yeah. You're have that message, like it's for everyone. So, yeah. And what have you learned? Just curious. I'm sure other people, like, what have you learned? Because sometimes people think, oh, this has happened to me. You know, that's common. I mean, I know I felt that way for a lot of things that happen. And then what have you learned? Like, you've grown obviously so much from these experiences, and you're teaching people. What do you think is like something that you've learned from, I know I'm asking you on the spot. If you can think of something, like one thing that, like, yeah, it really doesn't have to be the most thing, but just something you learned.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest lesson is just learning to go with the flow. Like, the more you fight things and say, like, this happened to me, I have MS, my life is over, the harder it's going to be. And so I know it's hard, right? There's like all those stages of grief, like everyone's going to go through them. And like, it's that acceptance phase that you'll get to. And then I think that's what I've learned, is to try to get to that. And let's be honest, there are days when I'm like, screw this. I don't want to have any of these diseases. I don't want to deal with this. I just want to be normal and feel normal and like go back to the way life was at 18, you know?
Yeah.
That had its own trauma too, you know? Like, we can idealize the past, but like really there was like other things going on too, you know? So I think it's just, the biggest thing I learned is just to like go with it, and it's gonna be hard, but you'll always get through it. Like, there's so many hard things, but we're all still here, right? So like, we made it through whatever those things were. So why not know that, like, how amazing are we because we did make it through all that, and we're super strong and we can keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can inspire others and empower others who are going through that, because that's something we all have to share, is we've all, as a common experience, is suffering at some point.
Yes.
We all experience that. And then we also experience joy and empowerment and overcoming challenges, you know, so it's something that we can share. What would you say is like how has it helped you? Because I noticed that you have this positive attitude, and you also have this realness. You know, you have some people that are like, just think positive, you know, or people that probably are supporting you say, oh, well, you know what? There's going to be a silver lining at the end of all of this. You know, I'm thinking, shut up. Like, I'm just like, I'm angry about this, you know, like you have all these emotions, real emotions. And yet, like, how long do you stay there, and when do you shift into this? Does positive mindset help?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I have a positive mindset, right? Like, I don't see anything as like, while I may see it in the moment as like, oh, this is the end of the world, I always know in the back of my head it's not. But I allow myself to like go there. Like, you can't ignore it, you know? And so for me, it's just like, I don't think positive energy is going to cure everything and staying positive is going to cure it all. But I think knowing that, like, okay, how can I spin this positively, or not even spin it, just know that like I'm going to make it through. So allow myself to be in those bad places. And I think for me too, one of the things is like going with the flow, right? Like, there are some crappy, like horrible symptoms I've had to deal with, or like I had to get a spinal tap and I ended up in the ER. Like, I don't recommend that, but like I went through it and it's okay. But instead of like, again, like how at the beginning I was saying, you know, I didn't want to eat dinner with my fiance, and like that was a big thing. And it's just being truthful. Like, to me, the people that just say, I'm okay, or I'm sad, or I'm mad, I'm like, well, why? Like, be really honest with yourself. Maybe you don't have to put it on Instagram or write a whole book, because, you know, I definitely had my own anxiety about like putting my life out there like that. But how can you be truthful with yourself? And it's so much easier when you can like just admit things and just say them out loud, even if it's to your mirror or your dog or whatever, just to be able to say like, this is really terrible and this is what's happening. Like, you know, and it is what it is. And I think when people try to like mask things, and especially with Instagram, it's like, here, let me hide everything and make myself look pretty. Or there's so many people who's like, I'm staying positive, positive, positive. And it's like, well, at some point you're going to crack. So where's that crack? Like, or I hope you're at least doing that off camera and at home, so you're getting that out, or you're going to have like symptoms and things are going to go awry, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah. Because the reality is that life does hit you with things that you don't expect.
Yes.
And so you're going to have real feelings and real emotions. And sometimes like going to that depth of, I mean, in order to surrender, sometimes we do get to that point of, wow, this is like really hard.
Yeah.
It's like surrender. Did you get to that point of surrender? Like you just said, like, let it flow? Or?
I mean, for sure. I mean, there was like fighting it and crying and being like, why me? And also, you know, when you're, it's not even like the concept of it. It was like physically, I felt so terrible that I was like, am I ever going to feel better? And I knew that I probably would, and I do. But in those moments, I was like, if this is life forever, like this is miserable. What am I going to do with this? And I knew that I would have to figure out what to do with it. But in those moments, I was just like, for now, I'm just going to cry and let it be that. And, you know, it worked. Like,
Yeah.
much better today, but I know that it'll probably happen again, you know?
Yeah. Which is good. You allow yourself to be human and have
Yeah,
a human experience.
exactly, right.
Right. That's awesome. What would you say about like resilience? Like what has helped you be so resilient? You really, yeah, yeah. I'm just amazed also by the fact that you put a book out about
Oh,
all this. That takes a lot of courage, by the way.
yeah, I didn't know it at the time. I just thought I was writing a cool story.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know where that resilience comes from. It's like always been there. You know, like when I was a kid, my parents were always like, okay, you fell, but that's okay. Or like, if we get bad grades, my mom would stick the F right on the refrigerator and be like, that's okay. We're just going to confront it. You'll do better next time. Like, it was like nothing was bad. Like, nothing was ever said, oh, that's bad and your life is over. So I think I had just always had that attitude growing up. It's just like, okay, like bad things are going to happen, but you know, a year from now, 6 months from now, good things are going to happen. And you have to get through the bad to get back to the good. And then you'll go back to the bad. And like, it's just going to keep happening. And so I guess I saw that from a young age. Um,
Yeah.
I know I've thought about this a lot. Like, why do I do that? Or why do I have that? And some people don't. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
My,
yeah, and some of it's innate and then but also like you're growing up. I mean, the
yeah.
fact that you had that's just amazing. I love that your mom did that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Because there's so many young, and there may be some young people watching this as well, I mean, there's a lot of people at all ages.
Mm-hmm.
But especially like if you're a parent, that's so important because so much of the time you're like trying to protect your child, and I've done that myself as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to protect your child from everything that could be wrong. You don't want them to fail. You want them to always succeed. But then there's that pressure of like, oh, well, I have to always be on top or I always have to be this. And then if they fail, it's like the end of the world. And your
Mm-hmm.
mom taught you, you know what? If you get an F, all right, well, just do better next time.
Exactly. It's like,
You know,
okay.
that's great. And
Yeah.
you're successful. I mean, it's like, that's the thing is like, that's where successful people have failed a lot or failed in things and they just got right back up.
Yeah.
Well, failed, but I mean, you just,
Right.
yeah,
It's just, okay, keep going.
just keep going. Yeah. Um, what would you say are like some tips that you would have for people who are wanting to start yoga if they are, because you wrote a book about for beginners,
Mm-hmm.
which I love because people get to start somewhere. You're not going to start like, again, like the expectation that you're going to be doing like, leg behind your head or
Yeah.
something like that. Like, how do you start just like begin yoga or
I
yoga
mean,
practice?
I think, right, there has to be that commitment of like, okay, I'm going to do this. If you're, I mean, there's so many great options now, like go on the internet, go on, like there's so many apps of like Active and all these things you can download and they'll teach you anything. I mean, I have a book, like you can go buy the book. Like,
Yes, let's buy your book.
there's just so many options. I think if you want to start, I think the thing to remember is you're a beginner, right? You didn't pick up a bike and start riding it. Like that took you a while as a kid, right? And now we just all ride bikes and it's no big deal. So that's what yoga is like. And remember that it is not about like doing the leg behind the head pose. Like if you are already flexible, like you might love yoga because you're going to be probably good at it right away. Like the poses are going to come easy to you, but who cares? Like that doesn't get you anywhere. So I think if you're trying to start yoga, like don't be intimidated. I know that's easier probably said than done. but find like the thing online that you can do so you get comfortable with some of the terminology so that when you go to class, it's easier. Or find the beginner's class where everyone's the beginner, and so there is no person doing some crazy thing in the corner that you're like, what are they doing? Like, make sure, the teacher's like, I know sometimes it's intimidating, but we want to know, like, oh, this is my first class, and then we'll come help you. Like, nobody's going to ignore you. They're all there to help you. Everyone's excited that you're trying yoga. And there's always a saying, like, you're only a beginner once, and that's really exciting because there's sort of that, like, when you first rode a bike, it was like, look, I took one training wheel off. Look, I can balance for like 5 seconds, and then you take the other one off, and it's like all these great moments, and those are exciting. Like, that's a fun time to like celebrate. So when you're starting yoga, like, oh, maybe it was really uncomfortable just to close your eyes, and then 2 weeks from now you can close your eyes. Like, there's all these little wins that you can have in that. So that's like, enjoy that. So go for that. Like, go to yoga because you get to have that experience.
Yeah. And you get to see the progression.
Mm-hmm.
If you're practicing, it's one of those.
And then if it's like just meditating, like that, you'll see progression, like anything you do, or like just applying some, like breath work, or just being able to take deep breaths. Like, that might be something you just start with. Like, there's so many options, I think, that you can find something that works for you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, just taking deep breaths. That's big. Like, we hold our breath all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize it until you say, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started doing breath work or mindfulness, I had such shallow breathing. No wonder I was feeling anxious all the time, because I'm not getting the oxygen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it's so true. I mean, I remember when I first started and they would ohm at the beginning of class, I could like, ohm, and that would be it, because I didn't have enough breath to, like, these people would go for like a minute. I was like, what? How do you do that? But then it like comes because you relearn how to use your breath,
Oh yeah, I remember that too. When you start, you're just like, "Om, what is Om? What are they saying?" And then you find out later, the vibration. I mean, the sound, the vibration, and there's just so much to yoga.
Yes.
It's like a lifelong practice.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just get to. I mean, do you ever really master yoga, or is it something?
Right? No, you just keep learning. Like, I learn something new every day. And I haven't gone to a public class in a long time, but, I'm learning, and I might go back and then I'll learn something else, So
Mm-hmm.
all different.
Yeah, that's amazing. So are you teaching classes? Do you teach classes, or are you not doing that anymore? Or?
I don't teach publicly anymore. I mean, I've taught privately. I might go back to teaching publicly. For a while, I just couldn't physically do it. So who knows? I'll probably be back. So, and I mean, like, just talking with you now, I was like, oh, I forgot like how much I knew. Oh, I want to go teach again. Like, it'd be fun to stand up there and like actually have a class of beginners and really like embrace that and be excited to see them do all that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same as being a parent, like to see your kid do all these things that you're teaching them is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure it would be something. I mean, yeah, it's so important too to take care of yourself too.
Yes.
I mean, to take care, notice when you need to stop, and then at some point you may have an inspiration and you're like, okay, now I'm ready to go back. I mean, it's like we all pause for a moment, because I mean, you're writing books. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're doing,
Yes.
and you get to shift and teach in different ways. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'd love to take a bigger. Where do you teach class? If you were to teach live, where is it?
I live in Venice, California, so Santa Monica area.
All right. Well, if you do, I'm going to come. I mean, I'll come to your class. I live in a little bit Santa Clarita, north of LA.
Yeah.
So awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
So well, when I'd love to, because you're just so open. You're so open and easy. Like, I would love to take a class from you, because it's not intimidating at all. Like, that's what I love about. I mean, I'm just getting to know you now, but that's what I love about your energy, is that you just are like so open. And what a gift to offer this, your students, and then these, the books that you've written. and to let people that know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
That is powerful. Well, do you have some more? You have, there's like 5, I know we talked about like, are there 5 steps? Have we gone over all the 5 steps of a yoga practice, or trying to think, because we're just flowing here. So I'm wondering.
I know, I love the flow. Oh yeah, I mean, if there's like 5 things you could do every day, it would be to like move, to breathe. Um, it could
Okay.
just be like, oh, I woke up and all I'm gonna do is like lay in Shavasana with, which is basically lay on your back with like maybe your palms face up and close your eyes and take 5 deep breaths. Maybe you do 1 sit-up and that's enough for today. I don't like, anything is movement. That's asana or the poses, so find something like that, and then maybe take a couple breaths. Meditate, which I think always people are intimidated by, like, I can't meditate, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, close your eyes, imagine a blank chalkboard and just stare at it, and when you stop staring at it, go back to staring at it, and like, that's it. Or listen to your breath. Close your eyes, listen to your breath. And when you can't listen to your breath and you're thinking about something over here or there, come back to listening to your breath. That's all it is. And you can do it for 30 seconds. Like, it doesn't matter. And then you'll just keep doing it, and then you'll last longer being able to focus on one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you shared also like the limbs of yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, which is like we talked about earlier, like yoga, sometimes people think it's just movement. And there's way more than that. That's just like one aspect of it.
Exactly.
I actually took a 200-hour yoga course and I failed it. I failed it.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Honor that and like keep going.
It was humbling. It's like, wow. And it was an, an asana. Is that how you say it? Asana or?
Yeah.
Asana? Okay. I mean, I ended up taking a course in Yoga Nidra to teach IRS Yoga Nidra, and I passed that one. But the first one I did, because it was the movement stuff, and I was so intimidated, I got in my head, thinking, oh, I have to be like her, and I have to do it like this. And I just blanked out. I completely blanked out when we did, the part where you actually lead a class, and I just completely lost. So I flunked it. And that was fine. I was like, okay, we get to do it again.
Exactly. Get back up and try it again.
Right.
And if not, you still did the whole course. You learned about it all, so that's great. Like, you have more knowledge than you did before.
Yeah, I had no idea there was a whole nother aspect of yoga until I took that class, and then it's like a 5,000-year-old practice.
Yeah,
that's been around forever, and there's so much to learn. So I love that you shared this with us, and you're also offering a free gift.
Yes.
Do you want to share what that is?
Yeah, it would be the 5 things you can do every day to practice yoga. It's like a really simple 1-sheet PDF, like just download it, print it, whatever you want to do, and put it on your computer, you're next to your bed, and just like remember that yoga just takes 5 simple things, and maybe you'll start doing that and you'll want more, and you'll look for a class, or you'll go online and expand your practice, whatever you want to do. But hopefully that helps.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I love that. And that way people can start to practice, because sometimes it's like a place to start, right? It's like it's just a start for people who want to incorporate into their life. And the people who I've known who have done that, and it's consistent. Everybody who does yoga, some form of yoga, whether it's meditation, breath, or movement yoga, benefits. I mean, it's just, it's like you can't lose with it, which is amazing. So they can also go to your website. I'm going to write it down below, but it's Cory Martin.
Cory Martin Writes. You can find out all about my, upcoming books, or, once the book comes out, I'll probably be doing speaking and hopefully teaching some classes, which would be fun as part of the book tour. So who knows? But yeah, find me there.
I love it. And can they order your books through your website, or where would they buy your books if they wanted to buy? Your books?
Usually they'll be where any books are sold. So Barnes & Noble, Amazon, any of your local bookstores, so you can order from there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your knowledge and sharing your wisdom and your vulnerability, authenticity, all that you are offering to people that are listening. So thank you so much for joining us. And we will be having another show tomorrow. So this is 21 days of how to turn adversity into opportunity and create a healthy, balanced, purposeful life. And so we're going to be sharing with you 21 experts throughout the 21 days. And so this is one of those. And also join our Facebook group, Courage to Rise, where we'll be having lives with some of the experts, and also sharing some other information, tools, and tips. And so enjoy your day. And so perhaps today you can incorporate some of the 5 steps of daily yoga practice that Cory mentioned. So make sure you download the link, because it's going to be there for over these 21 days and perhaps extend it a little bit longer. So make sure you take it.